The number one benefit for me is not having to change my week and like redirect priorities to focus on hiring. I can still go about business as usual, which, client work is very demanding. We're constantly trying to keep the pipeline full. Like there's only so many things I can handle on my plate at any given time. And so being able to truly get that off my plate entirely and delegate it to a team like you guys, and then, a couple of weeks later have candidates, ready to hire essentially. Yeah. So funnily enough, we've pretty much only used these recruiting services for help on hiring. So I have another friend here in San Diego named Ricardo who started kind of putting feelers out there for hiring out of Mexico and Latin America. And so I was talking with him at one of the meetups that I run that we were looking for some help, just kind of doing menial tasks and things. And he was like, "Oh, let me see if I can hook you guys up and find someone for you." And so he did, and he basically handled the whole process, very similar to you guys, which I think was my first taste of that process, at least. So everything from the job advertisement to sourcing, vetting, highlighting the kind of top candidates, and then kind of just put it into our lap of like, hey, who do you want to interview from this batch? And so previously, honestly, like I've never hired anybody. I've only ever worked with contractors and like vendors. I never like hired somebody. So it's funny because I don't even have another reference for like what it was like before this. This just feels like the right way to do it. My name is Corey Haines. I'm the co-founder and CEO. Version Factory is a marketing agency for SaaS companies. We specialize in product marketing, and we do it in a different way where we do it on a subscription. So I have this interesting model where it's the one request at a time, depending on their plan. But we help startups with copywriting, positioning, branding, launching, everything in between. We have, I guess there's six, including us, and a seventh on the way. Yeah. So when we're thinking about hiring a copywriter, personally, I was kind of hesitant in just like how to even approach that because I knew that I couldn't pay top dollar for like, a real conversion copywriter. And all those guys are kind of contractors slash, business owners that are charging hundreds of dollars per hour and or just by deliverable. And so I was a little bit skeptical, like, man, who are we really going to find out there that's going to be high talent enough, but also like wants to work for a business like ours, which is an agency and very client facing. And we didn't want to hire someone full time to start. So starting part time and being able to be a little bit flexible on the hours. We're not subbing out hourly, like we kind of charge on a retainer. And then we do all these variable amounts of deliverables for our clients every month. That it would be needed somebody who was also down with that flexibility, that it wouldn't just be like, oh, you're going to do exactly 20 hours per week spread out, 4 hours per day. It's going to vary. It might be 8 hours one day, 6 hours the next, two the next after that, and then do next after that, another 8 hours after that, or something like that, right? Where it's a pretty big mix. And so yeah, it felt like a tall order, but you guys seem to be able to figure it out. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I also knew going in that I didn't want to just settle for any candidate, and that I wanted to hire someone who I really respected their amount of talent, and also really could see themselves kind of growing into a larger role eventually. That was a big deal to me because I didn't want somebody who was kind of just happy being static in their role, because we have ambitious goals and we want to grow, and it would be great to start somebody who has the ambition to like do their work knowing that this can also kind of provide other opportunities for them in the future, and that extra motivator can be the big difference in the quality of work that they produce, right? Where they're not just like an order taker, but they're being more proactive about it as well. And that was actually one of the really big things that I noticed about the candidate that we ended up hiring was uh, their goal was, I want to be like a team lead one day. And the thing they wanted to like get to the most and were most excited about was being able to be proactive with clients and being able to kind of like, put forth ideas and say, hey, what about this? What about that? Have you thought about doing it this way instead? And just kind of like dropping things into clients' laps and being like, this is something that we can consider for the future if you're interested in it. And so, yeah, the talent and the work quality it's definitely lived up to expectations. It's not just somebody sort of like doing the bare minimum and doing just enough to get by. We've been very happily pleased with the fact that they're like living up to that expectation of being proactive and really kind of getting after it. Yeah. So the experience was really easy. It just felt like I get some email updates on kind of the progress so far, and I love having the transparency into the job posting, how many views, how many applicants, how many were screened, kind of seeing like the pipeline and seeing people move through that pipeline as well, getting the reports on it. Um, I think one of the biggest benefits, one of my favorite parts is being able to kind of get a little preview of like, hey, here's some work samples. Here's the types of people that we have in our pipeline that we think are promising. And also, I really appreciate that you kind of gut checked with me, being like, hey, are these the right type of people? Like, we think that they look good, but do you agree? Do we need to adjust at all? And we didn't really make like an adjustment, but I did give some feedback on, hey, these are good, but like I'm a little bit wary of this type of experience or this type of work sample. Um, and I feel like we adjusted really well and were able to kind of keep that in mind going forward so that we were highlighting the right types of candidates, which I think probably came out like the hiring probably came out of that a bit because they were a little bit different than some of the first work samples that we got. Um, and yeah, I mean, honestly, it's just an amazing process being able to be like, hey, here's some candidates ready to hire. They're already screened, vetted. You can see the work samples, resumes, LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera. I like having your perspective as well, where like you gave us the rubric scoring. You can kind of give us a little preview of where you think that they're strong and why you think that they're a good fit for the role. And that way I can come in and I can really just hit the hard hitting questions, get to know them as a person, see how they might fit with kind of our workflow and our culture and like collaborating with the rest of the team and really kind of get into like, do I think that they're a good candidate for this role right now? Not like all the other stuff that you have to figure out about, is this person qualified and um, are they even really interested in this job and all those types of things. I mean, honestly, one of the other benefits that I didn't think about going into it, but that I realized when we were actually going to hire the candidate that we did was um, it's nice having you guys kind of as like a liaison between all the candidates that we're working with because uh, it doesn't make it as uncomfortable or I guess like you have to play this, you have to kind of do this dance with candidates where you're like, okay, well, what's the pay range? And um, you're our first choice. And if this doesn't work out, then go to this. And so having you there as a liaison being like, okay, Connor's going to be in touch with you about next steps. And, if anyone that we decide to not go forward with, I know that you can send them a message that was like thanking them for their time and letting them know that, we're moving a different direction, quote unquote. Um, it feels like it gives a little bit more power to the employer in a way that's nice, where it's not just this like cut and dry, like, oh, you're good and you're bad. It's like there's more gray area and it's a little bit of like a gentler process for both parties, I think. Um, but again, another piece of the puzzle that I just like didn't have to worry about at all. It was like, okay, I'm going to pick the one that I want to hire. If they move forward, great. And then I don't have to worry about anything else, about all the other stuff that we have to kind of undo and close the books and finish the process. Yeah, I'd absolutely recommend Constant Hire. I think especially for like what you guys specialize in, you nail it. And it's so funny because I was just seeing on Twitter the other day, like people talking about how everybody move that's gonna slapping AI on their product now is kind of like removing it, and now like the big value prop is going to be like we do this without AI. And I've seen the same thing with all these people looking for like all these overseas kind of offshore talent, and everybody jumped on that bandwagon. And now I think it's going to shift back to hiring out of the U.S., Canada, UK, Australia, but mainly in the U.S. I think especially. And so now like that's just really embedded in my head. It's like, okay, I need like someone with strong English speaking skills, or I need somebody who's in the U.S. or Canada. Like I would absolutely recommend Constant Hire. And yeah, I think just for like to the way that you guys handled it was so professional. I never had any doubt about like, your guys' capabilities on finding somebody and like handling the process completely, which is also a big deal, to be honest, because there have been some other experiences where they're very professional and they find good people, but it just felt like they didn't know exactly what we wanted. And I feel like you guys really understood exactly what I wanted, which is a big deal.